the outcome at a micro level. One word. Twinkie. I know you're thinking to yourself, Twinkie, Jim, what in the world are you talking about? You know, Hostess made the decision that because it could not come to an agreement, because it could not effectively restructure in order to survive and compete in the 21st century, that it made more sense to simply go out of business. Well, one of its many unions decided that it was going to call that bluff, if you will. They thought it was a bluff. And would not give in. Would not negotiate. Would not budge. As a result, Hostess is no more. Twinkies are no more. That's at a micro level. At a macro level as a country, we've got that situation. We've got two political parties that are acting like that very union in the Hostess example. And rather than coming together for the benefit of this country, they're more interested in trying to score thaw political points. They're more interested in playing kabuki theater rather than addressing the very serious and real issue of how do we get back up on the ledge that is the fiscal cliff that we fell off of some time ago. We'll explore that a bit more on the other side of this break. You're listening to the Palmetto Conservative Show here on the Conservative Broadcast Media Network. Stay tuned.
You said in the Rose Garden, the day after the attack, it was an act of terror. It was not a spontaneous demonstration. Is that what you're saying?
Please proceed, Governor.
It is in response to a video, a film. This is in response to a video.
Internet video that we had nothing to do with.
That was spontaneous? Was it a planned attack? Was there a terrorist element to it?
This is a response to a hateful and offensive video.
The video and its influence on the protests that occurred in Cairo and Benghazi. In response to this video, it was the video that caused the unrest in Cairo, that precipitated some of the arrests in Benghazi, and it was sparked by the reaction to this video. The video was a precipitating cause to the unrest, specifically in Libya. Might take advantage of a situation that was brought about initially as a response to the video in question.
Natural protests that arose because of the outrage over the video.
You are totally correct that they spent 2 weeks telling us this was about a tape and that there was this riot outside the Benghazi consulate, which there wasn't.
Natural protests that arose because of the outrage over the video.
I was in chronic pain, and my family struggling to make ends meet, food and gas prices going up, even keeping my job was iffy. Then I learned about a new miracle drug made in Washington, D.C., Spenditol. Spenditol is Washington's answer to all the painful problems Americans face. How to borrow $800 billion for a stimulus that didn't create jobs or fix the economy? Spenditol.
Spenditol is not for everyone. Side effects may include a mountain of government debt piled on our kids, a sudden loss of freedoms, higher prices for everything, leaving our kids a lesser America than we had. Ask your doctor or congressman if your conscience is strong enough for Spenditol.
And it's so popular in Washington, we have to import trillions more of it from China. Spenditol makes you feel better now and pushes off the really bad stuff till later, for them to deal with.
Call the White House and Congress. Tell them, stop spending it all.
All of time's
And welcome back into the Palmetto Conservative Show. I'm your host, Jim Lee. Thanks for being here this evening. As I mentioned at the very outset of the program, there are so many things that are top of mind, but certainly one of them that is getting finally a little bit more attention than it has in the past is the fact that, well, now that the Supreme Court has determined that Obamacare is, well, in their mind, constitutional, so long as you call it a tax, it's coming. And for those who haven't spent the time, now that Nancy Pelosi passed it, seeing what's inside of it, we're finding some fairly horrific things are inside it. And as a public service, a public interest exercise, I wanted to go through a couple of things that Forbes recommends, 5 things that will protect yourself against Obamacare. Now that President Obama has won re-election, repeal of the Obamacare health law is no longer realistic. And that, I must tell you, personal commentary, is quite sad. Anyway, although some state governors continue to resist, and there are still some pending legal challenges, prudent Americans should prepare for the law being eventually implemented in full. Again, I note the government is ill-prepared to actually carry through and implement Obamacare in full, but never let those details get in the way. Continuing, Obamacare will worsen the current physician shortage. The law will also drive physicians to become hospital employees or to join large accountable care organizations, or ACOs, where their treatment decisions will be monitored with mandatory electronic medical records. Government and private insurers will increasingly link payments to adherence to quote-unquote comparative effectiveness practice guidelines. Next time you go in to see your doctor, tell them that you'd like to talk about how well they think they do when it comes to comparative effectiveness practice guidelines. Let that sink in for just a second. What the hell is comparative effectiveness? When it comes to health care, where the same treatment for ostensibly the same symptoms produce different results in 2 different people. How does that fit into your comparative effectiveness? But I digress. Physicians will face significant conflicts of interest when their patients might benefit from treatments outside the guidelines, but the physician risks non-payment or losing his ACO contract as a result. The unintended consequences. Moreover, the ethical challenges that we create. So how can ordinary Americans best protect themselves under Obamacare? I think one of the first things you can do, I'm grateful that we were forward-thinking over 25 years ago when we had children and made the decision that one of them would go to medical school and become a doctor. I say that sarcastically and tongue-in-cheek because only God had control over that. We were just blessed with the result. But I at least will be able to have access to someone in the field of medicine who I can at least talk to, only if for no other reason that they're a blood relative. But anyway, here are 5 practical recommendations. Number 1, get a good primary care doctor if you haven't already done so. The Association of American Medical Colleges projects a shortage of 60,000 physicians by the year 2015. For those of you looking at a calendar, that's little more than 2 years away. And 90,000 physicians by 2020. Again, 7 years from now, roughly a 10 to 15% shortfall. Although the shortage preceded Obamacare, the new law will make matters worse, which is often the case when it comes to central planning. The Physicians Foundation predicts a quote-unquote silent exodus of physicians retiring early or reducing work hours in response to Obamacare. Many primary care physicians are already overloaded and closing their practices to new patients. If you don't have a doctor yet, get one before it's too late. Similarly, if you're approaching Medicare age, that would be 65 currently, and your current doctor will retire soon in a few years, consider switching to a younger doctor now. Most doctors no longer accept new Medicare patients, and this problem will worsen with anticipated Medicare payment cuts. However, most doctors will continue seeing their current patients even after they turn 65. But if you wait until you're after 65 to look for a new doctor, you may just have a hard time finding one. Number 2, use a health savings account, or an HSA. HSAs are tax-free savings accounts where patients can deposit their own money to be spent later for medical needs. Most patients use HSAs for routine, predictable expenses such as flu shots and well-baby checks and the like, coupled with a high-deductible insurance plan to cover unlikely but expensive serious accidents and illnesses. Because patients with HSAs control their own medical spending, they and their doctors, without requiring approval from government or private, they and their doctors have greater control over treatment choices without requiring approval from government or private insurers. Patients with HSAs enjoy comparably good outcomes as patients with traditional insurance while spending significantly less. I wonder why that is. Think about that for a second. How is it that patients who are using an HSA to pay for their health care have comparably good outcomes as patients with traditional insurance, ostensibly not paying the same amounts out of pocket? That would probably be because those who are treating it like it's their money are taking care of themselves better or following the doctor's advice in the first place. As an added bonus, many doctors' offices offer HSA patients a significant discount because they don't have to deal with insurance paperwork. Imagine that, the burden of regulation and paperwork driving up costs. Who knew? Number 3, consider a concierge or direct pay physician. More and more primary care doctors are establishing quote-unquote concierge practices. Patients pay an annual fee in exchange for guaranteed 24-hour telephone access and longer personalized consultation time for complex medical problems, as opposed to the rushed 15-minute appointments common in many overcrowded primary care practices. Most concierge physicians will also act as your advocate if you require hospitalization for a serious illness, coordinating your care with the various specialists based on his detailed knowledge of your full medical history. Direct pay practices are similar, but without the annual retainer. Because you pay your physician directly, he is not beholden to the government or other third-party payers. Concierge practices can be a win-win for both patients and physicians, as physicians spend more time with their patients and can practice according to their best medical conscience for reasonable reimbursement. Patients receive higher quality care for a fair price. Nor are concierge practices necessarily expensive. Some services are surprisingly affordable, costing approximately $150 per month. To wit, that equates to the cost of a daily latte at Starbucks, which your concierge doctor may tell you is bad for you anyway, so anyway, I digress. Number 4, consider medical tourism when appropriate. Certain non-emergency medical conditions are amenable to medical tourism. A hip replacement costing $30,000 in the U.S. might cost only $10,000 in India. Many overseas medical tourism facilities are modern high-tech clinics catering specifically to Western patients, staffed by American and European-trained physicians with success rates comparable to a good U.S. hospital. If you can find one, as we continue to shut down hospital after hospital,